All right, good evening, guys. That's kind of hot. All right. All right, good to have everybody here tonight. I know we've just got the wrapping up kind of our week here. Let me just pop into my site so I can pull this up as well. All right, beautiful. Okay, all right. I'm such a walker, and I'm going to try to stay put. It's very, very hard for me. I'm used to walk. If you're in chapel with us, I walk up and down the aisle the whole time and talk to all the kids and get super, super close to them. But for me to be on TV, I'm going to have to stay stationary. So it's going to be a strange thing for me. But I think I've met just about everybody in here. My name is James Taylor. I work with the school. I'm the headmaster at the school here at Calvary, and have the privilege of being with you guys here tonight. It's been a great week. It's been awesome to have the kids here this week, and to also cover some pretty practical lessons on parenting. So as I mentioned to you guys as we've been doing introductions and meeting people this week, listen, I claim no like masterful authority, all right? So it's just, this is a parent sharing with other parents. My wife and I, as I mentioned, we have two kids. We have a 21-year-old daughter. She is a junior in nursing school. We have an 18-year-old son who just finished high school. He's heading off to UGA this next year to study chemistry, something chemical related. Biological, what is it, KT? Biological chemistry, something like that. All right. But he wants to be a doctor anyway, so he wants to be a neurologist. So that's what he'll be studying this next year. My wife, Karen, is back there. I asked if she wanted to come up. She said no. And if I was going to have her come up, I would have had to give her advance notice so that she would have been dressed far nicer. But that's my wife, Karen, okay? All right, so what we're going to talk about today is developing strong, godly kids. And all of us are busy. We all have lots and lots and lots of things that we do. But I would assert that the role that we fulfill as parents is really and truly our most important job. That as we look at our role as parents, what we're doing, and parents and grandparents, frankly, but our role as parents, grandparents, but particularly parents investing in the lives of our kids, we are training up the next generation. How we perform, what we do, how consistent we are, how sincere we are, how much we emphasize a spiritual upbringing as well, will impact the next generation. How we do, which is kind of terrifying for me because I'm largely a big kind of goofy guy. And so how we do as parents, it's going to help define where we're going to see that next generation. What's so intriguing to me, so our daughter just got engaged this summer. Great young man. He's a full-time student also, but also he's a youth pastor at the church at Godly Station in Pooler and wants to go to seminary and is cool. But Karen and I joke all the time, we laugh all the time about the idea of how we'll see Alyssa and Rylan evidence behavior like us, like, just how they act, how they, it's just very interesting. They're imitating what they've seen, right? And that's part of what parenting is. So as we're going through tonight, I'm going to basically talk just about these 3 points, all right? I'm going to expand them, but these are basically the 3 points that we're going to deal with this evening. The importance of a loving home, the impact of consistency, and the influence of a personal, not perfect, walk with Christ. So we're going to deal with those things: the importance of a loving home, the impact of consistency, and the influence of a personal, not perfect, walk with Christ. Now, as we think about it, right, when you're preparing for children, and you're going to have your kids, this is like what's in your mind. I joke every time I'm up speaking. I always say, like, every time I'm looking at a Bible passage or something, I'm always making a movie for that passage in my head. Like, I'm always filming what that will look like. So when you picture marriage, when you picture having children, like in my mind's eye, before I had children, it was something like this, this perfect little family running through a field of flowers, and the reality is more like this, right? And so, you got a mom who's pulling her hair out, and you're, wrestling with paying the mortgage and paying the bills, and you got the kid. If any of us have had children for any length of time, your child has looked something like that kid on the far right, where they just throw down and have a super big temper tantrum. So, there's a dream and there's a reality to this idea of parenting. And the secret is to kind of enjoy every step. I like this lady here with the tiara on. I was the perfect mom until I actually had kids. And I think sometimes that's the way we feel. Now, here's the cool thing, is that what a kid needs is a loving family. That's what a kid needs. Does not need a perfect family, but does need a loving family. So let's talk about just that first point, okay? The importance of a loving home. Colossians 3:14 says, "And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them together in perfect unity." And what I really like about this is that here it says, "And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them together in unity." So a home that is based on love, not a home that's based on perfection, not a home that's based on looking like someone else, but a home that is based in love, that there's genuine love, not perfection, not doing all the right things or saying all the right things or knowing all the right ways to do things, but a home that's based in genuine love is bound together in unity. And so here, as we talk about this first step, this idea of love, how does love impact a home? And here's just the truth about it. Love promotes stability, and stability promotes growth. I suspect, and truthfully, because I am coming from a school atmosphere as well, I could kind of geek out on this a little bit just because there's some really interesting studies that are being done from a psychology perspective where, when does our growth take place? When we're in survival mode, our growth doesn't tend to take place very quickly. Sometimes it doesn't take place at all. I suspect all of us are adults in here. All of us have lived in survival mode, at some point in time where you are just trying to get through, And so here, what I'm talking about is this idea of, hey, when you're not in survival mode, when you're actually enjoying where you are, and we're going to talk a lot about this idea of be where you are, but when you're enjoying where you are, when you're appreciating what's taking place around you, when you are making the conscious decision to love your spouse, to love the people who are involved in you, to love your children, when you're making that choice, love promotes stability, and stability promotes growth. A kid who's coming from a home that has some peace to it, a kid who's coming from a home where the people there express love and show love, listen, that kid has the opportunity to grow at a faster pace. And again, there's a lot of psychological research being done right now on this exact idea of a stable environment allows growth, okay? So I put here, right, is one, to be crazy about your spouse. I make no apologies. Karen and I make no apologies for the fact that listen, we're crazy about each other. We've been married for 25 years. Our anniversary is actually on the 26th of this month. Married for 25 years, and we're still at that, we still are crazy about each other. So, and our kids see that. And our daughter, who's recently engaged, a lot of times she'll be like, oh, cut that out. That's gross. Don't be kissing or whatever it is. But what she's really saying is, hey, you're showing me what my pattern is for what my relationship should be, And so one I put here, just for in that marriage relationship, your kids are watching, your kids are learning, and your kids are going to imitate. And so this idea of this love relationship, Ecclesiastes 4:9-11 says, 2 people can accomplish more than twice as much as one. They get a better return for their labor. And on a cold night, 2 under the same blanket can gain warmth from each other. And so here we talk about this idea of marriage or relational stability. Now, Karen and I have done youth work for 25 years in various capacities. As a youth pastor, as a teacher, she still is a teacher. But we consider ourselves in youth ministry for 25 years. And so as we've come through there, we've had lots and lots and lots of friends who are coming from a situation where they don't have a spouse at home. And so in that situation, how do you promote that level of stability? I have a good friend named Jenny, and I learned so much from her and she was a single mom. She had kids in our youth program. And what she made sure to do is she said, I'm presenting a relationship, a family of stability, a family of love. she didn't have a husband who was there because of various situations, but what she did have is she had both her mom and dad lived in the area. She was showing her kids what relational love looks like with that. She was super involved in a small group at church where they were very, very involved with each other's lives. She made the determination that she was going to still display what a healthy relationship was supposed to be like, what a healthy, loving friendship was supposed to be like to her kids. And she had great kids. She was very intentional with that idea. And so I think here we see this idea of love promotes stability, and you can find a lot of ways around that. Love is easy on the left. You know, you got the wedding gown, everything's, cooking, you're just starting out your marriage, and it's easy there. But, I want to be that couple on the right. I want to be that couple on the right that even when they're older, they're still nuts about each other. So a big part for me about this idea of understanding a Christian home, understanding what it is to bring up strong kids, is promoting an environment that is filled with love, and we'll talk about a little bit more with this with a toolbox on each one. If you're married, listen, I just tell you, I'm going to say these things. We're all adults with the exception of you, and I won't get anything past PG, I promise. But listen, kiss often and say I love you. We make it a point, and listen, I credit KT, my wife, over that, that if our kids, are on the phone and we're, saying goodbye, and they don't say I love you, hey, I love you. Say I love you. Okay, I love you. If we're texting, we end with I love you, And so we make it that point where your kids are constantly being reinforced. And again, a kid that's constantly being reinforced with love is able to understand what that stability looks like, Now here we're still talking about that idea of relational stability. And so the point is never stop, point 2 here is never ever stop dreaming together. Being passionate about what takes place in the future. And that future might be tomorrow afternoon. And that future might be 2 years from now. But the idea is that you're dealing with it as a family, where you're making this family unit, where you're dreaming as a family, where you're thinking about what the vacation's going to look like. And maybe the vacation is just going to Tybee for an overnight, or maybe it's just going to the beach for the day. Whatever it might be, that we're dreaming together. Number 3, I say all the time in just about every setting, because it's one of my pretty big pet peeves, is be where you are. And what I mean by that is it is so easy when you're at work to be, I've got to shop for this and I've got to do this, and I'm at work and I'm doing this, and okay, I got to do that. And then you go home and aren't you depressed when you're out at a restaurant and you see like a whole family like this? You see like 5 people. They haven't even looked at each other. They're all worshiping their 4-inch God, and this is it, like, oh, I've got to answer this email, and you're sitting on the couch with your kids at the end of the day, and yet everybody's doing this. Everybody, and so one of the big points of this idea of that loving atmosphere that promotes stability is to be where you are. And I tell this people all the time, like, when I'm at work, I'm a madman. I'm working, and that's just what it's going to be. But I've made the point, and sometimes it drives people crazy. It has driven Patrick crazy on many times. But I make it a point when I get home after work, which is never early, I'm working hard. But when I get home from work, my phone goes on the counter. It's not on me every second of the day so that everybody thinks that they can get me at every second of the day. And I've just made that a point. And I've told the people that I work with to say, hey, shut down. You got to shut down, And so be where you are is such a powerful state. When you're at work, be the best worker. When you're at home, be the best parent, And if you're having a hard time with that, and I'll say this, when we had 2 little kids, and I was working literally 3 and at one point in time 4 jobs, trying to provide for our family, I am just worn slap out. I'll tell you the truth. I'd be driving home tired, and about the last thing I want to do is walk in and play and, frankly, even communicate. I think I would rather just roll over and, die for 12 hours, And there were times, you guys, when I'd say, hey, you know what? I'm going to stop by and get a cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts on my way home. I'm going to take the long way home so I can just chill. Sometimes I would have nothing on in my car. Sometimes I might just have to, I've got to listen to music. There are times I drive into the driveway and say, my real job starts now. That's just been the stuff that pays my bills. My real job starts now. I got to walk in, and there's like some times where I'm like psyching myself up. Okay, let's jump. And now the kids come in and it's, Daddy, bruh. There's nothing better than that, except when you've worked 17 hours or 18 hours and you're just worn slap out, you know? And so, you know, truth of the matter is, be where you are is hard. It's a challenge, but it's also a choice. Number 4 is speak positively. And I would encourage on this, I actually asked my daughter about this as well, but speaking positively about your spouse, speaking positively about those in your family unit is so crucial. Making sure to never tear down your spouse. And let me just say, if I tear down my wife in front of my son, guess what my son's going to be more apt to do with his wife one day? The same thing, right? And so I'm going to speak positively. If I speak negatively about my wife, what would my daughter be more apt to accept from her husband one day? That same thing. And so it's so important that as we're dealing with the people in our lives, particularly our children, is this idea of speaking positively. Number 5, toolbox, is never go to bed angry. Solve your stuff. Very, very few times in our marriage have we ever not been able to solve something. We're going to solve it. We're going to do it. Number 6 drives my wife nuts, but it's choose happiness. And happiness is absolutely a choice. It's a choice you have to make every single day. In some cases, it's a choice you have to make every single hour. Happiness is a choice. I'm going to choose whether I'm going to walk into the situation positively or I'm going to walk into the situation negatively. And when you choose happiness, man, listen, just your relationships are better. How you relate to other people and how they relate to you is better because you're making that decision. Man, I like being here. It's been a long day for me, but I couldn't wait to get to see y'all. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, that's a choice. I'm making that choice. I want to be here with y'all. I've enjoyed every night this week. And so we choose happiness. Number 7, put Christ first and be in church. I just want to encourage you, right? You and a number of you I've already chatted with about that, but man, find a church home where you can jump in and get to know people. You know, hey, listen, here's the promise. People are messy. So are you. You know, you're messy, I'm messy. That's what relationships look like. And they're beautiful. Beautiful and messy. But get involved. Jump into a place where you're coming to know Christ. And we'll talk more about that in our 3rd point. But that idea of church involvement is super, super important. All right, the second part here with love promotes stability and stability promotes growth is to like your kids, don't just love them. So we love them because it's kind of our job description, you know. But I would encourage you also to really like your kids. Psalm 127:3 says, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb a reward. And 1 Peter 4:8 says, above all, keep loving one another earnestly. And I love the second part, since love covers a multitude of sins. You know, that, hey, we're all imperfect, broken vessels. It's just who we are, right? I mean, frankly, that's kind of the neatest part of humanity is that we're all just, that's it. We're broken folks in need of a Savior. And I love this second part because love covers a multitude of sin. Keep loving, man. Earnestly love, earnestly care, because that love will be able to look over the fact that they have this irritating habit or they do that. Hey, I can look past that because I love you. This covers a multitude of sins. So here, like your kids, don't just love them. One, I said, be where you are again. With kids, we've found, again, we're at the point where our kids are older, but really searching for their spark. I like the fact that we were chatting at the beginning. We were saying, hey, you know, it doesn't really matter if they're into drama or if they're into sports. Like, as long as they're belonging, as long as they're finding a place that they can say, hey, this is my thing. Like, I really like this thing. And really helping them find it. Finding that spark where, you're point number 3, fostering their creativity. You're finding that thing that they're interested in. You're finding that spark that they're intrigued with, whether it be academically, and it should be academically, but also extracurricular-wise. Finding that thing where you're defining, saying, man, you know what, you've got such a kind spirit. I wonder how that's going to play in, you know, and really encouraging kids. Hey, man, you were awesome when you sang in church today. I wonder, you should be singing more often. To find that point of where they're involved. The challenge for a lot of folks is, I'll have dads all the time who'd be like, well, I like football. My kid's going to like football. And I've met their kid, and I'm like, your kid's going to like to dance or sing or, I'm not playing football, man. What do you care? As long as they're involved, as long as they're finding a place where they can say, this is mine, man. This is who I am. This is cool. So finding their spark, finding their creativity. Our son Colton played football, since middle school, and he got a concussion, fairly serious one, his first one. He got a second concussion a year later. And Karen and I had made the determination with him and had him involved in it. We said, listen, dude, third concussion, pal. It doesn't matter what's taking place. Football's over. Your career is officially over. You get a third concussion. He had been defining. That had been a big part of his spark for a long time. And he got a third concussion his junior year. He made starting line, and he got a third concussion his junior year. And he knew what was coming. Karen and I sat him down and said, hey, man, football's over. And he was upset. That's how he had defined himself. That was his spark for such a long period of time. Part of our role as parents was then to find another spark. Hey, the idea of not being involved is not an option. What else are we going to do? And we gave some different options, and he said, I'm going to join the swim team. And so he joined the swim team and swam his junior year, swam his senior year, and said, I wish I'd been swimming since elementary school. I wish that's how I had started. Part of our role is to find a spark. And if you need to replace the spark, then you replace the spark. That's kind of what it is, right? That's about liking your kids, really letting you hear. Number 4, 2 ears, one mouth. So often we don't need to inform our children of anything. A lot of times we just need to listen to what's going on in their head. And my granddad always used to tell me, you got 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. You got to talk less and listen more. And I've always liked that expression. So we love just sitting down at dinner and just listening, just listen to the kids. And then the fifth thing is just encourage. One of the best examples of this that I was humbled and frankly teared up like a little baby. But my daughter was telling a story about a girl who this was in the middle school years, and the girl was super interested in boys, super interested in boys. And there was a couple of boys who were saying, oh, you're so pretty and all this stuff. And Alyssa came home, and she's telling us the story at the dinner table. And we were talking about this kid and trying to figure out where she was. I wasn't saying, and don't you ever be that way with boys. I was listening. So what do you think about that? And she's just going through and talking about it. She said, I said, well, why does she have to have that all the time? She said, oh, man, they're always telling her that she's pretty, and they have to have that. She has to have that. And so, well, why do you think she has to have that? She goes, well, I don't need that because you already tell me I'm pretty. I thought, oh, thank you, Jesus. We actually did something right. And just realized, but she said that. I want to bawl like a little baby, thinking, wow, that encouragement is when she's at her most sensitive years, for her to know, hey, you're pretty, that you don't need to get that definition from anywhere. And I praise God because now she's got a great young man who tells her she's pretty all the time, and that's the way it's supposed to work. So you define your family now with love, and then I love this kind of generational picture later. They'll define their family with love in the next generation. They're watching. They're watching everything we do, and it's super important to make that a priority. And so here I say toolbox for the kids as well. Kiss them often and say I love you. I don't know what type of an upbringing you had. I came from a lovely, lovely home, truly and honestly. My parents are great, great people. But my father has never expressed emotion. His parents never did. He grew up in a broken home. He just never expressed emotion. It never, he wasn't a guy who hugged. He wasn't a guy. I never heard my dad say that I love you. I knew he did, but I didn't hear that from him. And once I got 15 or 16 years old, and big enough to not really care what people thought about around me, I made sure I started wrapping my dad up, and I'd wrap him up every time I'd see him. I'd hug him, and he'd be so uncomfortable, and I'd kiss him on the cheek, and he'd be so uncomfortable. But we just made a point. Well, now, every time we see each other, we hug, and we'll kiss each other on the cheek. My son would not mind you telling me. He would, if he was saying goodbye to me right here, he'd come up and give me a kiss. But He's big, 200-pound, 6-foot kid, and he'll say, Daddy, I love you. When he's leaving the house, he'll come up and give me a kiss on the cheek. Every night we say good night to each other. We kiss each other, tell each other we love them. Hey, kids are never too old for that. Frankly, during the years when your kids, particularly your boys, will push you off the most, listen, inside they're really saying, please don't give up. Don't stop doing that. Kiss them. Tell them you love them. Nobody's too cool for that. Second is read together every night. Man, just spend a little bit of time reading. Once the kids get a little older, let them read a page and you read a page. Huge things. Third thing, you hear, this is a drum that I beat. Be where you are. Number 4, speak positively to your children and about your children. Reinforce them that you're proud of them for what they're doing. You're proud of who they are becoming. Never go to bed angry with your kids either. And I'll add to this one, never be leery about saying that you blew it. I have had to many times go to my kids and say, hey, I'll lay them beside them in bed at night and say, hey, Daddy totally lost his cool when I came home tonight. You know what? I lost my junk. I shouldn't have done that. Will you please accept my apology? I should never have spoken to you in that way. I spoke to you in a rude way, or I wasn't kind to you. And they'll say, oh, I love you, Daddy. It's no problem. And we'll hug and kiss. And never be afraid to say you're sorry. Some people say, oh, you can't say you're sorry. That's weakness. No, that's strength. That's not weakness. That's strength. So don't go to bed angry. Choose happiness again. And then number 7 also, put Christ first. Be in the church. You're in the church. Your kids will have a better chance of being in the church. And so I encourage you with that. Okay, point 2, the impact of consistency. This is a verse. Did I do that right? Oh, sorry, I popped ahead too. The impact of consistency. Hebrews 12:11 is a verse that I quote all the time as a person who works with students and their discipline. This is a verse that I talk with kids about a lot. And it's a powerful verse. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but afterwards it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who are trained by it. Right? And so this kind of encapsulates the idea of consistent discipline. That no one ever, I've never ever disciplined a kid, I've never ever disciplined my children where they're like, hey, listen, that was a blast. Thank you so much for taking my truck away from me or locking up my Xbox. Hey, that is just so pleasant. Thank you for that blessing. It's never, no discipline is pleasant, ever. But here's the point, is afterward it produces a harvest of righteousness. But the kicker is if you're trained by it. So our role as parents is to not just discipline, but to discipline with the purpose of them being trained by it, right? So that if they learn from it, then the Bible promises what's the result in their life? A harvest of righteousness and peace. And so that is a huge, huge thing. So here's the truth about discipline. Love often looks like discipline. It just does. Love is not always about hugs and kisses. Love sometimes looks like discipline. So here's the truths, okay? I work with kids full time. My wife would tell you that I think I am a big kid a lot of times. But number 1, kids want rules and limits. They will tell you that they don't, particularly during the preteen years and teen years. They want you to provide limits. They want you to provide rules. I promise you. They're not senseless, stupid rules, and I don't mean foolish limits. But what I'm saying is common sense limits. They want you to provide those for your kids. And then they want you to be consistent in them, because the kids are all about what's fair. That's not fair. They love that phrase, So if you're going to provide limits, if you're going to provide rules, then you need to be consistent in them. But they want them. They want to know what those rules are. Number 2, good discipline is relational and does not have to look like conflict. I promise you. So oftentimes, people run from conflict, whether it's at work or whether it's at home. We run from conflict because we have in our head that it only turns out negative all the time. And it doesn't have to turn out negative. A lot of times, discipline just looks like a conversation. Now, it might look like a conversation that you take their Xbox away at the end of the conversation, but it's still a conversation, And so I added here, don't be afraid of explaining your logic. I remember when I was a kid, if my parents said, do this, what's your next statement? Why? And then what do sometimes parents say? Because I told you. Because I said, Now, as a kid, that drove me crazy. I'm like, ugh. It just doesn't make sense what you're trying to tell me, you know? And so I never take that as an affront to me. I don't mind telling my kid, here's the reason why. I told you to be in at 10 o'clock. You're not. The roads aren't safe after a certain point. Therefore, X is the punishment. That's just the way it is, man. I'm not upset with you. I'm not angry. I'm just processing the paperwork. That's what's happening, you know? And so, you know, if you do that, don't be afraid of explaining your logic. And good discipline is relational. It should look like a conversation, not like an edict, which is why I said there, you know, don't do it angry. Number 3, you can work hard when they are young, or you can work hard when they are old. It's your choice. I had an old guy in our church tell me that when our kids were little. It was great advice, great advice. You can do the hard work when they're little, or you can do the hard work when they're teenagers and rebellious and stealing your car. I'm telling you, do the hard work when they're little and be consistent with it. And then you'll get to, like, we have friends that they'll talk to us at 18 and 21. Whoa, those are tough years. And we're like, tough years? They're fantastic years. What are you talking about? You're like, these are great years. These are the best years we've ever had. This is unbelievable, you know? And so I love that advice. The advice an old guy gave me, I give it to you too. So this is what it looks like, right? Which one looks easier? You know, you got the temper tantrum birthday party kid on the one side. That is easy to correct. You know, you got the rebellious teenager on the side, you know, getting stuff pierced that you didn't even know she had. And now we're in a whole different mess, right? And so work hard when they're young, work hard when they're old. You're going to work hard at some stage. You choose. Here's a toolbox for the kids. Never discipline in anger. And I really mean this, that if you're hot, if you're super mad about something, take a chill. Go for a walk. You know, tell the kids, hey, go on up to your room. I'll be up when I calm down. You know, walk away, man. Do it right. You know, don't discipline in anger. Discipline when you're chilled so that it can look like a conversation. Why do I say that? Because I've done it wrong. You know, and doing it right and doing it the right way is much, much better. If you're hot, you're mad, chill. Tell them to go sit in their bedroom for a minute, okay? Or 10 or 30 minutes, okay? Maybe not a week, but, you know, a little while. Number 2, discipline should have a clear start and end. Let me just focus on this one just for a quick second, because I watch parents, and I tell parents all the time, man, you have to give kids, and by kids, I mean little kids for sure, but I also mean your big kids who are finishing up with high school, okay? I'll have parents come through my office, and again, I'm there kind of at the crossroads of discipline an awful lot with what my gig is, right? And so I'm there, and I'll have a parent say, blah, 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 you did blah, 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 you know, you're grounded for a month, you know, or you're grounded until I tell you you're not grounded anymore. Here's the deal, right? If your kid's 16, 17 years old, even they can't understand a month. They just don't. Like, there needs to be a clear start and a clear end. It needs to be digestible. Unless the kid's done something just heinous, you know? But if it's just a normal, just stupid kid stuff, there should be a start and an end. If your kids are little, it's why there's a timeout thing. You're on timeout, and you get the little happy, you know, the frowny face that pops to a happy face at 30 seconds in or a minute in, you know? That's why there's a thing. Well, that's kind of what you have to do with your older kids as well. How many of you guys have kids over 13 or 14 in here? None of you. Okay. When you get there, here's some good things, okay? So as your kids are getting older, I'm telling you, it's a very common mistake that parents make all the time, where they'll take something away from a kid forever. Here's what ends up happening in most situations, and I see it all the time. A parent will say, you're grounded for a month. Or, I'm taking your car away from you for a month. Here's what normally happens in those situations. That happens on a Tuesday when I'm taking your car away from your month. Wednesday night, your kid has to go to work. And you go, man, I've had a long day. Oh, I'll just take your car. Now, you do that once, and your kids are like, papa, yeah, you know. You do that 15, 20, 30 times, and you're going, blah, 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 blah. You're beating the drum, and you're grounded for a month. And your kid is like, I'm going out. It's just, I'm telling you, I watch it all the time. I remember when Karen and I were youth pastors, or many, many years ago at our last church, I had this kid, John Welch, funniest kid, one of the toughest kids I've ever met in my life. What a hysterical child he was. terror. I mean, from the word go, terror. But what an awesome kid. Like, I just loved hanging out with the kid. Anyway, he had done something fairly heinous. And I was taking the kids away on a fairly lofty bicycle trip that we were going out to do this thing, riding on Cape Cod. We were up in Massachusetts at the time. We were going to ride on Cape Cod, and it was like something the kids were pumped for. We were going out. We're doing all this really super fun stuff for the day. And John had gotten in this huge trouble, and blah, blah, blah. His mom and dad are yelling and screaming and blah, blah, blah. And you're grounded for blah, blah, blah. And I said to John afterwards, I said, dude, I'm so sorry. You know, I'm sure you're embarrassed that's happened in front of me. I can get you off the list. I can probably get you most of your money back. And he said, James, why are you getting me my money back? I said, well, dude, we got the thing on Saturday, and you're grounded until eternity. And, what are we going to, oh, they're not going to ground. They'll forget about that by tomorrow morning. So, what? Oh, I'm going on Saturday. Don't worry about it. I'll be there on Saturday. Sure enough, he's there on Saturday. There's no grounding, Now, I will tell you, I totally love the family only because a lot of times I love troubled kids, like maybe the most, a lot of times in my ministry. Their family went through so many struggles and so many problems that were needless because they were never consistent. They never said what they meant and meant what they said. And guys, I'm telling you, make your punishment shorter. So as we're working with kids, hit them where it hurts as they get older. So when they're teenish, man, this is it, man. This is the beast right here. Take this from them. Oh, they hate it. So 24 hours without their phone, like I can't be on, whatever it is. I was going to say Facebook, but I know that would make me old. So whatever it is that the kids are looking at, Snapchat, whatever it is. I can't look at Snapchat for 24 hours. Oh, my gosh, my world is over. You don't know what's going to happen during this. Blah, 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 blah. That's it, TV. Now, we got to the point where my son didn't care too much about the phone, but I'd take his video games. That was horrible. They got a little bit older, and it was their car. Their car is freedom. And my kids, if they were here today, they would joke with you about it. How old was Alyssa? 17? Colton was the same way. Both of our kids, man, they're like adults, like decent adults, good kids, right? They hadn't done what we had told them to. Both cases, it was academic. Your car's gone for 2 weeks. It's ours for 2 weeks. And our kids know if they tell me 2 weeks, it's 2 weeks. Because we know it means I've got to drive you to work. You got to come with me back and forth to school. All this stuff. So we know it's a pain. But they also know if we tell you 2 weeks, it's 2 weeks. And our kids were so embarrassed. Like, I'm a junior in high school. I'm a senior in high school. You're taking my car away from you? It's not your car. It's my car. You didn't pay for that car. I bought that car. That's not your car. You're loaning it. It's a borrow. That's what it is. So I'm just taking my car back. And it's 2 weeks, And so being consistent, again, you can work hard now or you can work hard later. Be consistent. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Last thing on this point is a fairly simple thing, but it's something that we've learned over the years just through experience with it. But I have this phrase that I say question marks rather than exclamation points. And I have learned, it's taken me a long time to learn this in my own adult life, is that when I am reactive, I'm super tense, whether that's at work, whether that's in my marriage, whether that's in parenting, whether that's in friendships, whatever. If I have to be reactive, I get real tense. I don't like how I feel in that. So I try hard to be proactive. I try to walk through my stuff ahead of time to be proactive with what I'm doing. I like this little quote on the side. It says, to be in your children's memories tomorrow, you have to be in their lives today. So we're going to talk about this idea of question marks versus exclamation points. And parents I've made fairly large mistakes on this. So this is just something that Karen and I have learned through experience, okay? And so why is this approach, and I'll explain it to you in a second, why is this approach of question mark versus exclamation points so important? Because choices are super important, okay? And I mean choices from the littlest age. I'd encourage you, Karen did this so great where the kids would be there and Karen would be taking Alyssa grocery shopping and she's little and Karen has this pretty little outfit picked out and Alyssa wants to dress as a princess and wear her cowboy hat and her rubber boots, and Karen goes shopping with her in her princess dress and rubber boots and cowboy, pushing her little wagon, people taking pictures of. Give the kids choices. What do you really care about that? Would you like to wear this or this? I want to wear this. Okay. Because I'm telling you, if we don't teach them how to make choices, they won't know how to make choices, all right? So choices, having the idea of a choice develops critical reasoning skills, powerful tool through your whole life. It develops responsibility. It develops maturity. And it develops a much more pleasant home life. That I always say there are very, very few hills worth dying on. And so allowing our kids in a conflict situation to have choices is crucial. This is a quote I say all the time. Kids don't learn how to make good decisions unless they have decisions to make. One of the things, and I've watched this happen more and more and more as millennials, and a lot of you guys are millennials, as millennials are having kids, their mistakes are, one, they think that their primary job as a parent is to develop happiness in their children. Can I just tell you that's a lie? Your job isn't to develop happiness. Now, it's also not meant to develop terror, so just relax, right? But here's what I'm saying. It's like a lot of times parents think, I want my kid to be happy all the time. Why? You don't want to develop character in your kid? Because sometimes developing character stinks. That's a hard process. What do you mean you develop happiness? So that's one thing. The other thing is they feel like to develop happiness and make their children into these perfect little individuals, they take all options away from them. They're going to provide them everything. They're going to go bankrupt over it in many situations. They're going to provide them everything because life is about happiness. Life is not about happiness. Life is about developing young men and women who won't be living in your basement when they're 30. Life is about developing strong youth. It's about developing strong youth who turn into strong young adults, who turn into strong adults, who get married to strong adults and raise strong children who will become strong young adults, who become strong adults, right? It's meant to be the perpetuation of stability. And so we don't learn how to do that unless we provide decisions for our children. I joke, but we got to start early on this. How do I put this? You will never sleep again. Right? So, all right, now I know you will not be able to read this next slide. The only reason I included these, and that's probably too small for you to read, but I'm going to read it for you. I never put copy up this small except for this one fact. All of these slides are going to be available for you, just like the video is. It will be available for you. So if you want to pull up these slides afterwards, you're more than welcome to do so. They'll be on our website. And I wanted to actually put in the exact scenarios that you'll have so that you can actually pull them up. So here's 3 scenarios I want to use for you on question marks versus exclamation points. And these 3 examples are just a way to show you how differently you can approach the same exact situation. So here's scenario number 1, which I've called to study or not to study, okay? Option 1 is an exclamation point reaction. You have exams on Friday. You need to study rather than wasting your time with your friends. You should know better. I shouldn't have to keep having this same conversation with you. Does that look familiar to anybody? You may see yourself in the mirror that way, or you may have seen your parents in that way. Let's take the exact same situation, change it away from an exclamation mark, change it to question mark. Here's the same situation. Now, you already know the answer. They got exams on Friday. You already know that, okay? You're a parent. You've been following through with their online junk. Hey, do you have any exams on Friday? You already know the answer, right? You already know the answer. What is your plan on studying? Do you need any help with organizing your study materials? Hey, with all that you still have to do you really think it's wise to go out with your friends Thursday? Or could you go out on Friday after you've completed your exams? Exact same conversation, exact same situation, 2 totally different results. Okay? How do we know this? Because I've been the exclamation point guy, and the question mark guy is a whole lot more pleasant to be around, and it raises better children. It just does. So that's one scenario. Here's second scenario. This is dating issues, or I could entitle this scumbag. All right, dating issues. At the dinner table, you're asking questions, and make sure you ask questions. And may I just say, have dinner together. And listen, I am a confessed workaholic, much to the chagrin of my beautiful spouse. I am a confessed workaholic. I give all credit to dinner to my wife. We have dinner together just about every single night. We joke. Now, we had 2 teenagers, and both of them are running like ping, 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 ping. You know, they're going everywhere, and they're doing practices for this, and they're studying for AP that, and this, that. We joked for years. I mean, late teen years. I mean, years. We joked that we eat European at our house, and Europeans, they don't ever even have dinner till 9, 10 o'clock. That's just weird, but they do. And so we joke, we eat European at our house. When our kids were at that age, we're having dinner at 9 o'clock, but by golly, my wife is making you sit down at 9 o'clock, and we are going to sit together and talk. And it's so important. So I tell you, sit at the dinner table, 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? Listen more than you talk. Listen to ask questions, and just listen to what they've got. So you're at the dinner table. Your son or your daughter announces that they are dating someone who you know is not a good influence, and you know it will become an unhealthy relationship. Option 1 is exclamation point guy. I forbid you to date that little dirtball. You know he's no good for you. All that's going to happen is a broken heart and hurt feelings. Right? That's exclamation point guy. All right? Exact same situation. Let's look at option 2, question mark guy instead. Hey, inside you're thinking, he's such a dirtball. But you're saying, hey, what is it that attracts you to that person? Do you think that their past could be a negative influence on them? Hey, what will you look for in a husband or a wife one day? That's interesting. Do you think they match that criteria for you, for your spouse? I'll tell this story. When I was 14, I was 13. And I was attending this group. Anybody familiar with Awana? So I had finished up with Awana, and I had been kicked out of this particular Awana group quite a few times. The guy who directed the group, his name was Al. And Al was a cool dude. He was just so patient. He was just such a nice guy. And so I would go to Al quite a bit. And I remember when I was, about that age, I was thinking, man, I'm just so lonely. I just really want a girlfriend. And, you're at that age, you're like, man, I just want a girlfriend. And I'm like, I don't know, ugly Jimmy. Like, I just can't, I don't know what's going on with me. So I'm talking to Al about this. And Al's like being so sweet. And he says, what would you be looking for in a girl? I said, wouldn't mind if she's hot. That'd be nice, But I also I'd like her to be a Christian. And I'd like her to come from a place where she really wants to have like a strong family. And I kind of went through and described I'd love her to be like really sold out in her faith. And I described these different things, and at the end of the conversation, Al's listening, and he says, James, why would a girl like that ever be attracted to you? And I was like, Al, that's so mean. Like why would you say that, And he says, no, let's just be honest, James. You're a troublemaker. You're not a believer. You don't go to church. You're not emphasizing character and the things in your life. So I'm not trying to be mean. What I'm trying to do is trying to point out to you is that you don't match the criteria of the person that you're looking for. You want to match the person, then you want to try to find the criteria and be the criteria. One of the best conversations I ever had, right? And so here, rather than, smacking the dirt ball or running them over with your truck, instead, be the question mark guy to ask questions. Have that same conversation, but it changes things. So those are two older kid ones. Here's a little kid issue. Providing choices for your kids is good as long as you set the parameters. Strong-willed children at the dinner table, okay? And this is, I don't want to eat my vegetables. Exclamation point, you never want to eat your vegetables. People are starving in the world, and you won't eat your dinner. You don't appreciate anything I do around here. Nobody does. Fine. Then you just won't ever grow up to be big and strong. All right, I've heard those conversations. Handle the same thing from a question mark perspective. Do you want to grow up big and strong? Do you want the airplane to deliver your vegetables? And you just make a game of it. Just make a joke. Very, very few hills are worth dying on. And kids are like little ping pong balls. Just distract them in a different way, and they're going to go with it, And so, just making a joke of it, having fun. We laugh all the time in our home because we're making fun of each other and making fun of life and just joking and having a good time. And so it's super important. Okay, here's the last thing. And this one is actually somewhat short. The influence of a personal, not perfect walk with Christ. I love this picture. If you haven't seen this picture, when the Hubble telescope was built, I love it. It's like two French engineers who did the Hubble telescope, and they cut the glass wrong. You guys know the story to this? They actually cut the glass. They measured the concave and convex measurements. They actually did the math wrong, which is, I find that so hysterical. Like, you don't double-check your work before you send something into space. It's a riot. But anyway, so they misshaped the Hubble telescope, okay? They did the convex portion 4 degrees off. They did the convex portion 6 degrees off. So it's like fuzzy space. It's funny, billions of dollars, American dollars. So anyway, They fix the Hubble telescope, okay? They figure out how to patch it when it's up in space. This is the first image that comes from the Hubble telescope. It was pointed at a nebula we didn't even know existed. It's called the Helix Nebula. And it became what they called the eye of God. Doesn't that look like an eye? Like, I love that idea. And I know that's not God's eye, but that is my God who created that. Like, that's pretty smokingly cool, right? And so when you look at this Helix Nebula, you understand that our God created the entire universe. He created every star. He created the perfect orbit and rotation so that our planets don't collide. He created how I can look at you with this eye. He created how I can move and dance. You know, there's no robot, there's nobody who can duplicate even doing this. Like, it's hysterical listening to scientists who just, they're trying to do such simple things, and our God created all of it. How can that bring about anything in us other than confidence in our God and confidence in our salvation? And so, one of the biggest things that you can do in your home is this, Deuteronomy 6, 5, and 7. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give to you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. You know, love the Lord your God. Do it. Let your kids see you doing it. Don't be afraid to do it. Pray when you're at dinner every night. Hold hands and pray when you're having dinner. Pray. Let your kids see you. Dig into it. Apologize to them when you're doing things stupid. Live that type of faith out in front of them, and it changes their world because it changes their perspective. You know, one of the best things in the world right now is talking to our kids, 18 and 21, about what they're doing in their devotions. Karen and I were going through the other day, and we were looking through Colton's Bible. And, you know, here's an 18-year-old boy, and we're looking through his Bible, and he's got marks all through it and highlights, and he's got notes in the margins, and we're looking and going, holy smokes, that's like the coolest thing in the world, you know? Like, this is what's going on. You know, so many 18 years old are out doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And, man, I love that. How does that happen, right? It happens by impress them on your children about. Talk to them about it. When you're sitting at home at dinner table, when you're walking out, when you're on vacation, when you make that idea of faith important. Develop a Christian worldview in your home. That happens by being in church. It happens by being in community. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul. The second thing there is discipleship. Our real job as parents, everything that I've talked about thus far, really could be all fit under the category of discipleship. That I'm parenting my children. Karen's parenting our children. We're doing that together, you know. But really, the whole time is what we're really trying to do is develop young men, young women who love the Lord their God with all their heart, who have a spark of curiosity, who are figuring out what their careers might look like, who are encouraged to say, I've got a lot going on for me. I can really do a lot in this world, who feel comfortable because they're being developed in a loving spot. And so discipleship is crucial. Proverbs 22:6 says, train a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not turn from it. That's the end. Developing strong, godly kids. Please don't feel like you have to do any questions, but we always said that we would end with questions. You're welcome to embarrass my wife. You're allowed to. I'm not. So if you have questions and that she can answer, I'm more than willing to do that as well. But any questions, and I will try to be just as transparent as possible about parenting, areas where we've messed up and areas that have gone well. Any questions about anything? Or have I missed anything, KT? Okay. Any questions at all? All right. We'd love to chat with you afterwards if you've got specific questions or anything that's going on. You know, parenting, it's tough, but it's also just remarkably fulfilling. And I love that expression told to me. You can work hard when they're young, and you guys all have younger ones. So you can work hard when they're young. You can work hard when they're older. I'd much rather work hard when they're young and enjoy the older. So anyway, it's a good challenge. Let me close this out in a word of prayer, okay? Father God, I just want to thank you, Lord, for the love that you have for us. Every single one of us in here, Lord, is a broken vessel, undeserving of the grace that you give to us, and yet, Lord, you heap it upon us. I want to thank you, Father, for calling us to be your children. I want to thank you, Father, for giving us the opportunity to have a personal relationship with you. Here you are, the creator of the universe, placing planets in orbit and yet you care deeply about my needs and my concerns and my wants and the things in my life that don't seem to make sense. I love the fact that you care about all those things, Lord. God, I thank you for bringing kids into our lives. I thank you, Father, for the moms and dads here. They're here because they brought kids here to VBS, and they're here because they want to know more. And God, I just want to thank you for that. I ask that you'd honor that in their lives and allow them to just have the joy of children walking in your path. We ask these things in Jesus' precious name. Amen. Thank you.